Okay, great. So I'll just head over to the slides and we could get started. So the first order of the day is getting started with efficient technical writing. I assume that's why a lot of us are here um, on this program to learn how to get started with technical writing. Some of us are already prolific, hopefully prolific technical writers or intermediate technical writers, and you want to learn more. This will be me sharing 4 years worth of experience in hopefully 1 hour, and I hope everyone gains a lot from this. And my name is William Imo. Once more, I am a product manager, developer advocate, technical writer, and software engineer. I basically do a lot of things. Today, I will be a technical writer and a product manager, and I'll be going through getting started with technical writing. So what should we expect from this? We should expect to, first of all, understand what the Jamstack is. I need to do this real quick. Yeah, so first of all, we'll understand what the Jamstack is. As I understand, not everyone here knows what the Jamstack is. I'll introduce you to the Jamstack, and then we'll talk about technical writing in brief. Then we'll talk about why we should write, because I feel like at the end of the day, it all depends on why. Why are we doing this? Why do we want to write? Why don't we just stick with writing code or doing something else? And then I will go over a practical step-by-step process to how I currently create technical articles and have been doing in the past couple of years. And I will go over technical writing tools I use, both to create content, edit content, publish content. I will go over all those. And lastly, I will go over all the analytics and SEO components of writing technical articles. Hopefully, this isn't too much information for you to pack in, but it's just enough to get you started and well on your way. So we'll hit the ground running. First, the hackathon. We've shared from tweets to the launch article to emails. I just want to give you a brief of what this hackathon is and what we expect from the hackathon. Traditionally, we are used to hackathons where people write code. After writing code, they deploy this, they push this to basically they deploy this and it sits there like every other side project. A lot of hackathons I have been to, I have attended, I have participated, I build stuff, and that's it. It ends up either on Netlify or Heroku back in days. But we decided to put a twist to hackathons by creating something more meaningful out of the hackathon. And we feel like this way, you don't just build something, but you get to internalize the knowledge which you acquired while building it through creating technical content. And not just only internalizing the concept or principles you learned, you also get to share this with people and begin to build some notability for yourselves, right? Begin to put yourself out there. Begin to, you could from this decide you want to become a technical writer full time, and hopefully that happens for a bunch of us here. So that's what this program is about. It's about creating opportunities to level up your technical writing skills, build Jamstack applications, network. Hopefully you get to meet each other here and create published content. So at the end of this, you should be able to write content and publish it. And how long will this go on for? It will go on for 2 weeks approximately. It could spill to 3, depending on how much quality we individually decide to put into the content. And to ensure we create the right content, we're on the right path, we will have workshops like we already know, and we have 4 speakers. 2 speakers are from Auth0, 1 is from Cloudinary, and myself. We are all developer advocates with multiple years of experience. And this workshop will go on for 2 days. Today is day 1, which you are currently participating in. And after the workshops, we'll begin the hackathon proper, where you get to build Jamstack applications using Cloudinary, Auth0, and any technology of your choice. And by technology of your choice, I mean it could be an API, a database provider, a hosting provider, however you deem it fit. And once this is done, you get rewarded, obviously, as it's a hackathon. There's going to be prize money, which is um, which is going to be awarded to the winners, and you get rewarded for creating content. You get swag from Auth0, Cloudinary, and Hackmamba as available. And I understand Cloudinary has opportunities for outstanding writers, same as the Auth0 community. These will be extended to participants as well. And one more thing, we wanted to open this opportunity to everyone. Initially, we decided we will limit participants in the hackathon to 50, but we decided, why shouldn't everyone have access to this? Why shouldn't everyone be a part of, the workshops, create content, and then if it's exceptional content, we review it properly and publish it. Everything gets published, but the really, really good ones make it into a top 50 that could be selected for a winner, and the remainder of 47 will be rewarded. Kindly mute your mics, please. One moment. Okay, great. Yeah, so that's it for the rewards, and hopefully we do our best and we get into the top 50. Regardless if you get into the top 50 or not, you still get access to everything in the program. You still get access to reviews, peer reviews. You get access to the network of everyone here. And if there are opportunities from Auth0 and Cloudinary, you get those as well. So from the first of all, does anyone have any questions so far? Like 1 minute, I could take 1 or 2 questions before I move on. I'm looking in the chat if there are any questions coming in. Okay. So I can't see any. I'll just move right ahead. So what is the Jamstack? I would like to start with that to, clarify things, because I saw from the application, not everyone understood what the Jamstack is. So I wanted to clear that up. Not in the past, not so recent past, we used to, build applications with HTML, CSS, JavaScript on the front end, and then on the back end, you'd probably have PHP serving pages, right? That's if it's a server-side application. Or you could have APIs built in PHP or any other backend language. But then we decided, not me, I wasn't part of them, obviously, but a group of people decided that there has to be a better way to build web applications that was, performant and was secure and, has a better developer or development experience. And thus came the Jamstack. And what is Jamstack? It's simply JavaScript, APIs, and markup. I like to start with markup because that's like more relatable. So markup is simply HTML or Markdown, CMS, content from CMSs, from Markdown files, could even be text files. This markup is processed with JavaScript, which you're familiar with. It could be plain JavaScript. You could build your own Jamstack engine, or you could use any of the JavaScript frameworks like React, Vue, Angular. This JavaScript is used to process this markup, and then interactivity from APIs, could be third-party APIs or what we call serverless functions, are baked into this markup that's processed with JavaScript to give you a statically rendered application. So I'll bring that down a bit. By statically rendered application, it's simply static files served over a CDN that are pre-built. So they are probably compiled by Webpack or any other bundlers, and they are built and served over a CDN. This is simply HTML, CSS, and JavaScript that we are used to in the past. So yeah, the Jamstack is simply an architecture or a pattern that's employed in building modern high-performance applications. And a critical part of Jamstack applications is the decoupled architecture and the interactivity that's baked in from or with APIs. And these apps, like I said, are pre-built and served over a CDN. So here we have example of JavaScript tools and technologies to use. There's React, Vue, Angular, there's Svelte, and more. It's JavaScript. More will come up maybe tomorrow morning. And with APIs, here we have Algolia, Auth0, Cloudinary, database providers, MongoDB, serverless functions. So you could write your own APIs in the form of serverless functions that are deployed on. They're kind of like microservices, I would put them. They are not within the scope of this talk. We could talk about those after now. And then there's markup with Markdown, HTML, CMS, content from CMSs. And there are specific technologies that are deemed as Jamstack technologies that put all these together and with a better developer experience. So you don't have to go through, the rigorous activity of piping these together. There's Next.js, 11t, Gatsby.js as well. Next.js is very familiar. So by now, I believe you have like some understanding of what the Jamstack is. So you probably already use the Jamstack, but you do not know. You write front-end pages in React. You use APIs, authentication APIs from Auth0, media APIs from Cloudinary. You use search from Algolia independently without a backend service. And you build statically rendered pages and serve them over Netlify. That is a Jamstack application. And Jamstack applications they range from simple marketing sites to blog pages and even like full-fledged applications, e-commerce applications, as we've seen. And just so you know, there are current advancements with the Jamstack. So for every day, there's, my friend Ekene had recently talked about it's distributed persistent rendering. Yeah. So that's an interesting concept you could look up after now. And these are, new stuff coming up with the Jamstack. We'll move right over to technical writing, which is why a lot of you are here. You'd want to know how to get started with technical writing. So what is technical writing in software terms? This is simply, writing communication about software tools, technologies, systems, and processes, right? And mostly the aim of this is to demystify complex or unknown terms. So we're talking about from documentations, articles, tutorials. It could be specification or requirement documents, copywriting on landing pages, marketing and promotional pieces. They all fall within the spectrum of technical writing. Once you're talking about software tools, technologies, systems, and processes. Now to my favorite part, why should you write? I would love to tell you a long story about how I started coding and how I got here. But I would shorten it to tell you that technical writing contributed about 85% of that, of my journey should be attributed to technical writing. And one of the main reasons, obviously, is to create active and passive income. With active income, you get paid to create content, to write. You could make that your main job just by creating technical content, by writing articles. With passive income, you could write articles, have a blog, you get paid. You could get paid for sponsored posts. You could create courses and you just get recurring income from that without having to do anything. So those are ways to make money from technical writing. And I can assure you that from today, if you dedicate enough time to creating content, you'll be surprised that in about 3 to 6 months as a developer, you could make either active or passive income from creating technical content. And I will show you how. I'll show you how to create content in this workshop. Another reason, obviously, is to build a personal brand and grow a network. So when you create articles, or when you create content and write articles, these are automatically indexed on Google if it's put on a blog or any of the other popular publishing sites, and the content is attributed to you. So someone looks up something from probably maybe Stack Overflow, there's a link to your article, they see you wrote this article, you automatically, that's some positives for your personal brand, which is good. And people could interact with this article, and that's how you start growing a network. And then there's also personal fulfillment from teaching. I personally derive that as well when I explain something to people and they're like, yeah, I get this. That could also apply to some of you. And lastly, obviously, is to stop developers from breaking their keyboards by writing good documentation and good articles. This is one of my favorite parts, technical article as a product. So I see a lot of technical writers, they just write articles because something popped up in my head. I just want to write it down. That's good. But what is worth doing is worth doing well. So if you're going to create content, it's better if you try to create it, the right way. And how is the right way? As a product manager, I started to see technical content differently from how I used to see it 3 years ago. And there's a particular concept I started to internalize, which I borrowed from the product management discipline, which is outcomes versus output. And we'll see in a bit what those mean. Before I create any content, I ask myself 4 questions. I ask why, what, who, and how. And by how, I mean how long. And I call these the W3H. By why, I ask myself, why do I need to write? Why do I need to write this? What does the audience or a business stand to gain from me writing this? Or if I create this, what do I want people to get out of this? That is why. Once I'm able to understand why, internalize why, I ask myself what. Okay, so now I understand why I want to, or a problem I want to solve. What do I want to do about it? What do I want to write? What exactly am I going to write? Is this going to be a thought piece? Is this going to be a tutorial? Or is this even a Twitter thread? Which one is better? When I figure this out, and also, oops, I need to mute somebody. Okay, so when I figure this out and internalize it, now I need to understand my audience next. So I ask who? Who is this for? Is this for beginners or advanced developers? Is this for intermediates? Is this for a total noob? Is this for a kid? Again, a little bit more context with who. Is this content going to be for developers working on a product, or is it just going to be for someone commuting? Is this going to be for engineering managers? Is this going to be for a curious engineer that wants to learn about the blockchain, for instance, or decentralized applications, or the Jamstack, right? So the more context I have on who, the better I am informed of what content to create. When I have understood why, what, and who, next I have to think about how long should this content be? What's the scope of this content? Should it be, maybe let's say 1,000 words, just a thought piece to provoke, the reader, or should it be a tutorial that's 2,500 words step by step? Is it an alternative to a course that is 4,500 words long? I do not personally recommend those because people get bored of them. But you need to understand the scope and the length of the content you want to create. Once you have these figured out, W3H figured out, since this is a workshop, you probably want to note this down, but I'll share the slides after now. Once you do this, and I do this personally, I move on to, so I'll just give you examples of what outcomes versus outputs mean. By outcomes, you're looking at, I'll start with, by output, you're looking at, just the content you're creating. Your mindset is focused on just the content, how you want to do it, and that's it. With outcomes, you're looking at the reason behind creating that content, right? As we had said in the W3H, the W3H powers the outcomes, and the output is just, creating content, right? So an example of outputs are, the article should be 2,000 words. Once you hit 2,000 words, you start panicking and you want to stop. That's output. The demo for the article has to use React hooks or some shiny framework. Once you do that, you're satisfied. It uses Cloudinary or SpaceX APIs or APIs from the moon. And once you do that, you feel the article is good. Now, this is great content, right? The content passes grammar test. You probably use Grammarly or some other tool. Punctuation is accurate. The words are like really nice. All these are outputs. They do not feed the real reason. They do contribute, but they are not the main reason as to why you're creating this content, right? So there comes the outcomes. An outcome is that the concept or solution is clearly communicated and the content structure is easy to follow, right? You get that the technology you used solves a problem in a better way. Not that you use React hooks or you used Cloudinary or you used some tool or you even wrote it in JavaScript or HTML, but it actually solves a problem, right? Which brings us back to why. Why did we write this in the first place? Then there is an outcome like the article improved community engagement or interest within, a topic or a technology. This outcome most likely ties to like business and developer relations, KPIs. I like to say that, right? So most DevRel teams have KPIs like we need to, get the community more involved. So let's create content. So an outcome for that could be that this article or this content actually spurred the community and generated interest within that topic. Another outcome is this article is best suited for beginners. So you measure certain parameters of the article, probably the demography of the readers, and you find out that, a lot of beginners actually interacted with this article. It could be from the questions, the follow-up questions that come from the article. That is a very good outcome as against the output. So when you focus on these outcomes, you get better quality content. You get content that's more meaningful. So I'll go straight up to a practical content creation process, and this is what I use. This isn't as in-depth as I would use every other day, but this is just enough, even more than enough, right? And I divided this into 3 steps. And this first step, obviously, is the background. Before you create any content, you would want to conduct a research. You don't want to lie to people, or you don't want to bobo people, as my friends will say. You'd want to make sure you know what you're talking about. Even if you do not have as much information, you find out more, right? Next, you internalize the W3H, which I had explained. You internalize what, why, who, and how long it's going to take. Once you move on from that, you create a demo if it is required. The demo basically will involve all technologies you need to create that article, and it could be hosted or it works locally, but it needs to be specified where this demo is running. You need to specify the environment for this. Moving on from this, you'd want to create a content outline. I cannot overemphasize how important the content outline is, because this is precisely a guide for you throughout the time in which you create this content. The content outline normally takes the form of introduction, prerequisites, and installation. And then there's the content body, a summary, and then references with further reading. In introduction, you want to ease people in. This is usually the hardest part of creating content, I would say, for myself. Sometimes I find myself writing stuff like, in the beginning, there was a word or something from the Bible, or I just start a discussion. Obviously, I'm going to remove this after, but just to get myself to start. But with introduction, you want to provide as much context as to the problem and what this article is going to solve, or this content is going to help solve. And also, just so you know, for the scope of this topic, I'm going to be speaking more about articles, if you haven't noticed, as aside other forms of technical writing. So within the article, you want to specify, what's the problem and what approach you're taking to solve it. If it's a tutorial, if it's a thought piece, you would want to talk about maybe a hypothesis or a theory you want to discuss, or a question, a burning question. You want to, throw this in introduction, make it as as intriguing as possible. You could even end with, a burning question. But that's the introduction. In prerequisites and installation, if you have done a demo, here you want to define everything you installed. You want to make sure that the reader is on the same page as you when you're writing the prerequisite and installation. So if you use the specific node version, you want to specify that here. If you used a specific environment variable, or basically your environment and all the software, all the tools you're going to use that you install at the start, you want to specify those here. This way you don't get people that go halfway and it's like it's working in the tutorial, but it's not working for me. We get that a lot. Hopefully you help your audience fix that in the prerequisites and installation. Next, we move to the content body. I put chronological here because that's one piece I see a lot of people miss, is they start from the middle and end with the top. So with creating content, you have to make sure you start first things first, right? The content is sequential, I would put it. The same way you built the demo, the same way you followed, the same way you imported components, you wrote out the different methods, you rendered JSX if it's React. That's the same way you should follow in the content body, right? You do not declare a function, or you do not utilize a function somewhere up top and then you come in the bottom and then start declaring that function. Because if your audience or someone was to read that article or follow that content, they will get lost, they will get frustrated, they will break their keyboard instead of not breaking it. Like, they would get pissed. And I get that quite a lot too. So we have the content body, and after that you would want the summary and call to action. The summary basically just summarizes, as it says, it summarizes everything that you have written in content body. You want to keep it as brief as possible, probably 2 to 3 sentences tops. And there's a call to action. So a call to action is usually one of the highlights of an article, because from there you want to lead people on to, you know what, you need to check this out, you need to do something further, you need to update this component, test this thing, try out maybe a part 2 if it's a multiple part article. Moving on from that, you have the references and further reading. If there's anything you used in the content that isn't yours, you can either reference it within the article or you could put it at the bottom. And if you have, materials you want or content you want people to read after that article that you feel is right, you could add that as further reading. Now, I'll go a bit in detail with the content. And for this, I put, together a number of tips that I know have helped me, or things I look at whenever I'm writing, the content body. At this point, I have built the demo. I tested it. It's working. And I want to proceed with creating the content. First thing, again, you have to maintain chronology. There has to be a sequence to the article. If possible, draw a map of, I installed this first, and then I declared this function, I declared this component, I imported it here, I used it here, I exported it here, I threw I emitted an event here, which is used here, but it has to follow sequentially. Next, try to use active sentences with a clear subject. It's easy for people to get lost when reading, complex, or when reading technical articles that's trying to demystify something that's complex. So it would be great if there is a subject. And by this, I mean, you have sentences like, I did this. Okay, not I, but we put this in, we declare a function using XYZ. We imported this function from here. The build or Webpack, you could say something like Webpack is going to, or Webpack bundles, Netlify serves, but there is the subject and then there's the action that is conducted. This way, everyone is clear on who does what. And this transcends beyond you writing it or the audience to even the other internal entities of the article. Next, you have to choose a pronoun. Most times there is different authors go with one of these two. There is either we or our and you or your. It depends on what you choose. For me, I'm usually inclined to using we and our. Never use I. Never say I did this. It doesn't come off right most times. So I mostly use we or our, and I maintain this consistently throughout the article from start to finish. If you choose to use you or your because you're explaining something to somebody, or it's a tutorial, you want someone to do something, like you put this, you create a folder, you move this file here, you import the component, maintain that part and use that throughout. In fact, if possible, do a find and replace, right? If you decide to go with we or our, we did this, we moved this component, we imported a function, we declare a variable, stick with we. That way there is consistency. You don't confuse the reader by starting with we and ending with you or your. Avoid repetition. Most times I see articles that are 3,000 words long, right? And then I look through, like when I want to review, I find out that you mentioned something up top, but at 1,000 words, 1,000 words later, you've forgotten you mentioned that. Or you weren't as, descriptive with it. So you say it again. You probably talk about, maybe, let's say use Cloudinary, for instance. You want to create a Cloudinary account. You just mention it lightly up top, and then you come in the middle and then you explain it even further. You just take up more space, and it's like you're taking up more brain capacity of your reader. So avoid repetition at all costs. Use short sentences, right? And each sentence should communicate a point. So ensure that if you're writing even a complex, look at a sentence critically to see if there's any way you can split this into short sentences. And by short sentences, I mean that each sentence should communicate one point and that point alone. Nothing else. It's fine. It's perfectly okay like that. That wouldn't confuse anybody. Maintain clarity and remember your audience. So throughout when you're writing this article, always remember who, right? Sometimes you want to explain something very complex. You ask yourself, should this person already know this? Or do I have to explain this afresh? Do I need to go in detail? If you understand your audience, you would know, okay, yeah, I need to talk about what React hooks are, or I need to drop like 1 line or 2 lines about what React hooks are, or I could just use a hyperlink. Most times, if I'm writing, a tutorial for an advanced audience and I see like maybe a beginner topic, I'm not too sure if they get what I'm going to say here. I just add a hyperlink for further learning. If you want to read on, you want to learn more about this, just click this link. So always maintain clarity and remember your audience. When writing content, white spaces and bullet points are your friend, because you want to write content that's easy to read visually, not just in the actual content, but when I look at the piece of article, I see that, yeah, it looks nice, right? There's space. I don't have like a paragraph that has like 10, 15 lines all packed together. When I see that, it's like I get anxious. I'm like, no, I shouldn't. I get lost, right? So maintain white spaces. Ensure that paragraphs are like 5 lines long, 5, 6 tops. If possible, make it 4 lines, but communicate a point in a paragraph and move on. Use bullet points if you have to list something, or if there are similar points within the same context. Try to use bullet points to specify those. With code blocks, you want to keep, people are usually culprits to these. I was, at the beginning, I would write, code blocks that are, 90, 120 lines long, literally 1 full page of JavaScript code in the article. And right now I look back at that content, I'm like, how did anybody ever read this thing? Right? So you want to keep code blocks within chunks. You want to keep them as short as possible. And a trick I use is I just make sure each portion has the right context and it has the right content. I'll show you in a bit what context and content looks like. And if it's too long and you cannot do anything about it, just put in a GitHub gist and copy the link to the gist and embed it into that article, right? So if somebody wants to see the full, the full code block, they could see it on GitHub gist as a GitHub gist. But most times you want to have your code in little chunks that are easier to consume and also visually pleasing. Again, an image is worth 1,000 words, and I say a GIF is worth 3,000 ETH if it's an NFT. But yeah, use images as much as possible, but use them as much as required. So use them sparingly. But okay, so I'll tell you something I do is I have checkpoints for images. I usually have one image after installation and setup. So let's say, for instance, I'm using a React application for starters. I install all the dependencies. I install any third-party modules I require. I add an image. I upload an image to show what my base setup looks like. That's checkpoint number one. Say, for instance, the next step for me is to build the markup, write the CSS, write the JSX. Once I'm done with that styling, I put another image. If I have to include interactivity, maybe that has to show with like maybe form submissions or there's some animation, that's my third checkpoint. It could be my final checkpoint, but mostly I have that checkpoint and then a final checkpoint that's a demo of the application as a GIF or a GIF. But these checkpoints are usually very important because a developer that I would say skimming through the article goes through, he sees this image, he has a mental picture already of what this looks like, right? He goes down further, he sees another image. Yeah, his mental image is, updated. He sees the final one. Now he has like a full mental picture of what his building should look like, right? This is also good for coherence. I mean, if I'm building something and I see an image in the tutorial, but what I have is like totally different from that, I know I have a problem early on and I need to fix something, right? Moving on, always use abbreviations to shorten stuff, but explain them the first time. This is also very important. I see people say things like CDN without saying content delivery network, or stating like a complex abbreviation without explaining first or stating it in full. So you should state in full, put the abbreviation in brackets, and then you can use that abbreviation anywhere else later. Remove complex non-contextual grammar. Now, so a lot of us probably are English majors that decided to start coding. And I see a lot of people use like strong buzzwords, right? It's like they are trying to confuse you. They don't plan for you to understand what that article is saying. And for them, it sounds nice. It sounds like, they know what they're doing, but I enjoin you, do not do that. It just, people get lost trying to figure out the word, right? So try to use simple grammar, I would say. Again, nothing is simple or easy. I find this in a lot of articles. And like I say, I was a culprit at some point. I'm explaining something. I say, so we simply do this. Or as you can see, this is easy. You don't know the state of the person reading the article. Why would you say it's simple? In fact, they're trying to figure it out and you're telling them it's simple, right? It's like I would say you're judging them already and expecting them to believe that this is simple. So do not use simple or easy. In fact, when you're done writing content, press Ctrl F, find simple or easy and replace it. You could use something like seamless that denotes a process, right? But there are other, synonyms to simple and easy you could use. Lastly, find your tone of voice and style. Everyone here, you would follow all these. It's like cooking, right? Everyone uses the same ingredients, but the food turns out different. It's the same thing too with technical content. Even though you follow all the steps here, you go through the W3H, you do everything right, it would still be different, right? Everyone's article would be different, even with the same technologies, the same problem, right? So learn to find your voice early. How How do you like to talk? How would you like to communicate? Because I'll tell you something, tomorrow or after a number of articles, if people hear you speak and read your articles, they will read your articles in your voice subconsciously, right? So find your tone of voice and your style of writing. But while you do this, remove exclamation marks and capital letters. I used to do that as well. I would end a sentence with exclamation marks and one emoji. It feels like I'm in a party. I'm excited. I read some of these articles on Medium. I don't even know what I was thinking. I think maybe I was drunk or something when I was writing them. But I always had exclamation marks and uppercase letters. It sounds frightening now when I think about it. But do not do that. So yeah, when I speak about a code snippet with context, I wrote this in a hurry. I hope it's not wrong. But yeah, you would want to, for this snippet, I would say, if you notice, I probably have like 15 imports in the actual code. But because here, what I want to explain is this on line 4. I just want to show a constant with name. Maybe in that article, that is the portion I'm explaining. If you notice, I use comments to remove every other part and explain what goes in where. So I provide context as to what is supposed to be here. And for imports, for instance, other imports will go below here. I write out what exactly what's the content I want to communicate. And then I say other component methods, functions, they all go in here. And then we know every React component, this is a React component. Every React component renders JSX. I just put like a code block, a comment block there that says the render JSX will go in here and then the export. So when someone looks at these, they are not lost, right? They can see everything they need to see about that component, but still understand that what I want to show them is name. I'm looking at the chat. It's hilarious. Yeah. So they can see what I'm trying to communicate clearly, right? And as well, they also have context as to what goes in where, right? So that's how you provide content, but also provide context. In reality, this component could be 50 lines long, but I removed every other thing, right? And just put in what was required and used comments to denote the rest. Now, the last step and the final step is the review process. So when you're done creating this content, you understand the outcomes over the output. And you understand the outcome over the output, it's time to review what you have written. A lot of people skip this review because writing is tough, right? Sometimes you put it off for like days and you eventually get it done with. And now you have to review it. You're like, no, you can't do this. You just look through it and push it forward and try to kill the reviewer or whoever will review it first. So you have to review the content as step 3. First, you have to verify that the demo works on your browser. The closest to working on the reader's machine is to make sure it works in incognito mode. And this is something that helps me as well. So maybe something works on my browser, that's good. But it's because I'm signed in, I have course enabled on my browser. I run it in incognito mode, it doesn't even work. So that's one step that shouldn't be missed. Once I'm through with the demo, I go over the technology. I made sure I didn't write nonsense. I'm not trying to kill people with the code. The components are well structured. The folders are well put together. The demo works, right? Next, I move forward to reread the content carefully. And then I consider every line written. And I ask myself, when I'm looking at every line, I ask myself one question. Is this necessary? Should this line be here? Even though I wrote it. Like I have in fact, I read it to remove that line. That's the point. That's the point of rereading the content, because I want to make it as succinct as possible, right? Once that is done, I verify the code samples and check that they are similar to what I have in the demo. A number of times I write, content, and probably I just look in the demo and I change something. But then it's no longer the same as what I have in the article. Yeah, that would confuse anybody. So next, I run the content through grammar editing tools like Grammarly and Hemingway app. You can check that out after now. These grammar tools, they basically probably see things better, and they provide suggestions you can implement, excuse me, in your article. Yeah, once I'm done with Grammarly and Hemingway app, an important portion of writing content or reviewing content for me is building that demo afresh, but this time around, I'm using only the article. So here, I am the reader. I am no longer the writer. So I don't look at any other resource. I don't look at any other thing. I don't even build the demo from my head. Like, I just read the article and then try to reproduce that demo with it exactly as it should be. And you find out that you would see a lot of components that you'd overlooked. Probably in installation, maybe you updated an environment variable somewhere and you forgot to add it in the article. You would see all of that. So this is a very, very important step. Everyone that writes at Hackmamba, for instance, an important piece I tell them is, once you're done writing that article, you're done reviewing it, build the demo afresh. If it's not a tutorial, if it's just a content without a demo, read that article. In fact, read it to understand it as a reader, not as a writer. And once you're done with these, I think it's good to publish. Maybe you could, yeah, a good part I didn't add here in the review process is peer review. I didn't add peer reviews because peer reviews are not within your control. You need to find somebody to review the article you have written. In this case, it could be another technical writer, an editor, your friend, the publisher, if you're close to them, like Tessa and Mikey help me do sometimes. And then once you're done, you can hit publish and send that out. Next, I will go on to technical writing tools. And these are simply tools I use every day to create content. For writing, I use Dropbox Paper. I use Dropbox Paper because it's easy for me to write, freehand. Like, it features a rich text editor. And then I can also write Markdown, and it just simply converts it. If I can't find Dropbox Paper, I use VS Code and just write plain Markdown. So as a technical writer, you need to learn how to write in Markdown. It's not all that important, but it is very useful. I highly recommend it. So Dropbox Paper and a Markdown editor, that's what I use for writing. In this hackathon, we would use Dropbox Paper. And you can use anything you like, but you would have to put it in Dropbox Paper. That's how we are able to review it, because Dropbox Paper features, collaborative reviewing. Number of people could review an article. For note taking and scribbling, I use Notion. So that's where I dump in like the outline. When I ask myself the W3H questions, I put all that information in Notion. If I have to do some research, it's in Notion. That's where I compose everything. For editing, I use Grammarly and Hemingway app. Grammarly basically for grammar, punctuations, and the Hemingway app for structure. They help you split sentences into multiple parts. And both of them have free versions you can use. Everything here has free versions you can use. So the Hemingway app too is free. Grammarly has a free version. If you have money, if you're rich, you pay for the pro version. And it's better, it's pro. For publishing, I use dev.to, Hashnode, and Medium. So I'll give you one SEO trick I use is when I write an article on dev.to, for instance, I cross-post it on Hashnode and I put it on Medium as well. And when I do this, I add something called a canonical URL. This basically tells Google that, hey, here's the original article. You will find duplicates when you're indexing these articles, but just know that this is the original one and you should prioritize this article. So you get all the SEO juice and publicity and, notability from all these platforms because Medium has like very high SEO ranking, Hashnode as well. Dev.to, they could add your content to their newsletters or the front page, which is good. Just ensure to add a canonical URL. Lastly, I ask myself, what's the point of writing if I don't know if what I wrote makes sense or if it's useful, if people benefit, from it, if the outcomes I had put together in the beginning, if they are met. So that's why I have to look at analytics and also SEO, because SEO is important to marketing teams and sometimes yourself as well. So with those, I mostly identify keywords and use them about 3 to 6 times in the header and bodies of articles, right? So when Google is indexing these, they find these keywords and they rank them higher. Also, the article title should be clear and contain keywords. So if you're writing something like building X with Y, or building a blog with Markdown and Gatsby, right? The keywords there are obviously blog, Markdown, and Gatsby.js. So you want to make sure they contain those. It's succinct and clear. Use case tutorials are the best. So how to do something. You ask yourself as a developer, as an engineer, when you want to find a solution to a problem, what do you search for? You search for how to add an image to a page, to a landing page, right? So that's what people would search for. And if you have these in your post or in your blog post, Google will rank you higher. At least that's what I think. I don't work at Google. Just my recommendation. With analytics, I track article opens and call to action conversions. Call to action conversion. So by tracking article opens, you can do that in a number of ways. If it's on your blog, you could have Google Analytics set up. If it's published on another platform like Medium or dev.to, you can always see how many times your article has been read. You can look at comments as well. And with the CTAs, you want to see that CTA you put in the summary, how often do people follow it, right? Like how often do people go to check out what you put there? And how you can measure this, you can use bit.lys. You can use shortened URLs. So you can go to bit.ly, copy the URL you want to track, paste it there, get the shortened version, and then put it in your blog or your post. When you do that, if someone clicks that link, you get like analytics on it. So Fatima, CTA means call to action. Yeah, at least that's what I think it means. Yeah, call to action. So it's what you want, an action you want people to, carry out. And like I said earlier, a canonical link, you use that when cross-posting content. So just to give you a quick summary before we close this out, today we talked about the content hackathon. We'll talk about the content hackathon, what we expect from the hackathon. And I hope that at the end of this hackathon, you're better technical writers. You've created content that's on your blog on dev.to, and you've learned how to build Jamstack applications with Cloudinary and Auth0. So that's primary I believe, for all of us here. Secondarily, you meet your friend, meet your co-founder here on Discord. Meet your friend. You could, do all of that. We explain what the Jamstack is. We talk about technical writing and why we write. Then we explained output versus outcomes and the W3H, the questions you ask yourself before you create any content. We went over a content creation process I use and you could use as well. Then we looked at technical writing tools we use in editing, content creation, note-taking, publishing. And lastly, we saw SEO and analytics, tips and things to look out for. So I believe with this, we end up as better writers and you don't make all the mistakes, I made earlier. Thank you very much. So after now, I think I'll take questions if anybody has them. Okay, I can see some questions already reeling in. And I see several people are typing. Wow. Anyways, I'll just go after them. So Fatima, CTA means call to action. And Terry asked, what are some of your ideas for crafting the title of your article and also for SEO? And is it advisable to use the same title of an article written already by another author? So you want to refrain from using the exact same title that's been written by another author. If it's within the same context, within the same problem, there's always a different way to put it. And to find content or to find keywords that are good for SEO, for me, I do like basic research. I look at Twitter. I look at, Google search. There's this tool. I'll share it with you after, Terry. You can use to find trending words within different sectors. So I use that to find out which title will click. And then I see what people are talking about. Are people talking about the new React version? What frameworks are people talking about? That would make for like great pieces. And also, one more thing I do is I look at Twitter conversations and see questions people ask that do not have replies. And if I see multiple questions within a certain context, then I know, I need to create content for this. So that's also how you can find article ideas. Terry. So Yagzi asked, what do you mean by canonical URL? So canonical URL is basically a preferred URL. So when you have content written and published in different places, the same exact content, you wouldn't want Google to have duplicate content indexed and served. You would want one that has priority or that has top priority amongst all of them. That's your canonical URL. And you can add that to dev.to, Medium. There's a way to add this URL. You can always search. You can always search to see how to add those. What more questions? Okay, so I guess there are no more questions, yeah? Mikey has been typing for the last 3 minutes. Okay. Mikey's still typing. Okay. He said his thoughts, no questions. Okay, so without any further ado, I'll share the slides in the chat now. And thank you very much. So up next, we will have Tessa. Tessa is amazing. She works at Cloudinary. I'll leave it to her to introduce herself, and she would basically be teaching us how to. What? Oh. I can't believe I was so slow to mute. So Tessa is going to be, teaching us how to build Jamstack applications with great media experience using Cloudinary. And Tessa, I'll let you take the floor now.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. I think make sure I'm sharing the correct screen and not my Discord. Not application screen 3. Too many screens. And there we go. My name is Tessa Merrill, and I am involved in developer advocacy.
I need to share again. I need to stream again.
As you know, I've been doing that for a few years. Previous to that, I was at Cisco Systems. And I also taught college and was a software engineer prior to that.